Both the President and Secretary Rumsfeld over the last few days have warned the Iraqis against sabotaging, destroying oil wells. Secretary Rumsfeld suggested this morning that that, in fact, was happening. To what degree do you have concerns that that would complicate your ability to finance reconstruction efforts there? And more generally, what efforts are you making to reach out to other countries at this point to pay for any reconstruction there?
Okay. Let me make several points on the question of the situation involving energy and this action that we have seen. We have received reports from our forces that a small number of oil wells in southern Iraq are on fire. We have no additional details or no information on the extent of the damage, and the exact nature of the extent of the damage is a terribly important thing when it comes to actually determining if this is a serious event or not a serious event. The United States and its international partners anticipated that Saddam Hussein's regime might attempt acts of sabotage against oil wells. By doing so, Saddam Hussein is trying to destroy the wealth of his own people and once again showing the world that he lies, because if you recall in a recent interview that Saddam Hussein did with CBS News, he was asked if he would take this step and he said he would not, that the Iraqi regime does not burn its own oil wells. Clearly we have some evidence already this morning in a small number of cases to the contrary, which is a reminder of what this war is about, the very fact that Saddam Hussein will lie. And the issue is his lies about his possession of weapons of mass destruction. World energy supplies are more than adequate to compensate for any disruption these acts may cause. Saudi Arabia and other major energy suppliers have increased production, and their exports are proceeding normally in this regard.
And on the issue of reconstruction costs and other countries?
Well, I think it's impossible to make any estimations based on this action. As I mentioned, it's a small number of wells, and the extent of the damage is not ascertainable at this time. Mike?
All right, what are the President's benchmarks for success in this campaign?
The President's benchmark for success is the disarmament of the Iraqi regime. That is what has brought the world to war in this case. What has precipitated the use of force was Saddam Hussein's refusal to go along with the United Nations resolutions that required him to disarm. And in this action, the United States is enforcing the resolutions of the United Nations.
And how will you know when disarmament has occurred?
There will be a series of military events that you will now witnessing, and you will be kept informed throughout the progress of those events.
What about Saddam Hussein?
You'll be kept informed of the progress of all events, including the leadership structure of Iraq.
No, I'm sorry. What I meant was, what has to happen to him? What has to his status be for this campaign to be a success?
You know, I think the focus is on disarmament, and disarmament is achieved as a result of numerous military actions that are being taken, and command and control is one of those actions that gets taken in the course of combat. And I'm not going to go beyond that and make any predictions of outcomes for any individuals. John?
Two questions. First on Saddam Hussein. In response to Helen's question, you said the administration would still welcome it if he left Iraq. Is that a reflection that it is at least the early belief that he survived last night attacks? And if Saddam Hussein or anyone in the senior leadership requested safe passage, is it too late for that now that hostilities have begun, or would the United States?
No, you should not read my answer to be one way or another on anything involving bomb damage assessment. As you know, bomb damage assessment is ongoing, and you should not take that answer to be one way or another. You should take that answer to be a repetition of the statement that's been made often here about Saddam Hussein should leave the country.
On the question of safe passage, if he or anyone in the senior leadership suddenly requested it now, would the United States say yes, or would the United States say too late?
Well, if Iraqi leaders turn themselves in, that would be a very welcome event.
Turn themselves in. That's
turn themselves in, or
passage.
turn themselves in, or leave the country. Requesting safe passage means you're turning yourself in essence, because you are contacting somebody for the permission to pass through. Any step that would remove Saddam Hussein from power will be welcome. Ed?
I have a follow-up to Mike's question, and I have a separate one. Are you saying that regime change, I assume you're saying, remains the policy, a goal in this campaign?
I mean, one thing you can rest assured of is after a military action is taken to disarm Saddam Hussein's regime, we have no intention of leaving Saddam Hussein in charge of Iraq.
And the President said 2 weeks ago that once hostilities began, he would inform the American people and Congress on the range of possible costs financial costs. When can we expect that?
No date has been set. It is a matter that is under review, and once a determination is made, it will be provided. Jim?
I'd like to talk for a moment, if we could, about the President's role in the general planning for this. We've had the general idea that the President had already given the go-ahead to the military, authorized them to move at their discretion when the circumstances were best. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
But in this case, he had to be involved in making the decision and giving the execute order for this particular operation for what happened last night. Why did the President have to be involved?
Well, I think you're going to see in the course of combat numerous operations of various natures take place. There will be many discussions here at the White House. I do my best to give you a description of the meetings that the President has without getting into the details of those meetings. And it's during the course of those meetings that the President is informed about progress in the military action, and the President is informed. The President lends his judgment, and there are different matters that require different levels of approval, and it all is a matter of the ongoing conduct of the operation.
In other words, in this particular case, the timing and the nature of the operation required presidential approval that would not have been required just for the beginning of the war as it had been planned for some time.
Well, again, there will be numerous items in the conduct of the war that involve operations at differing levels. Some of those levels may involve discussions or approval from the President, others may not.
Can you give us some sense of to what extent the information that was received last night that prompted this particular mission jumped the schedule that had been anticipated and planned?
No, I'm really not going to get into any type of operational decision-making or timing issues, things of that nature. That's not something that I can do. Gene?
First of all, do you have any readout on phone calls?
The President has been making a large number of phone calls over the last several days now to leaders all around the world. He has reached out to leaders in every corner of the world, from a number of Arab leaders who are important to leaders in other nations and other continents. It's a very large volume of calls between yesterday and today. I did not bring with me the specific list of all those calls. It's a large number today.
You posted as is your policy.
Yeah, let me see what I can do on providing more specifics later. And the calls are still ongoing, too.
And the point of the calls?
The point of the calls is to touch base with world leaders about the military operation, to talk to them about
as Ari Fleischer continues the briefing,
as we've discussed, the disarmament of Saddam Hussein's regime.
Now, we know, in hindsight, as we all saw on TV last night, we know how the President opened
sirens
this
are
war.
sounding in
Why did
Baghdad.
he
That would
open
make
it this way? There are many
perfect
ways.
sense, as evidently U.S. ground units
Gina,
going north
it's a question
from
that gets right to
the south
recommendations.
Kuwaiti border are making progress. So sirens are sounding in Baghdad, and we'll let you know if it goes beyond that.
President's recommendations are the best way to win the war and to disarm Saddam Hussein. He relies on their judgment and expertise. He lends his thoughts to it, and the action was taken.
But what was his expectation? I mean, this is a done deal. We all know what it is. It's not a secret. What was his
The
expectation?
President's expectation of all actions military will be to pursue the disarmament of the Iraqi regime. That's what this is about. The reason war has been brought upon us is because Saddam Hussein refused to disarm. This did not have to unfold this way. The President gave Saddam Hussein every opportunity to disarm the way other nations have disarmed when they wanted to disarm, and that meant complying with the United Nations resolutions. Saddam Hussein failed to avail himself of that opportunity, and therefore he brought this upon himself. And the pursuit of this will now be done through military operations, and the President's only objective in making determinations about which military plans are best is what will lead to the disarmament of the regime.
But did the President hope that a strike at the leadership of the Iraqi military and government would, in fact, disassemble the military and make the operation either end quicker or go easier if he could knock out the leadership?
Well, clearly, there are millions of Iraqis who are yearning to be free. There are many who are in the military and other places of importance in the Iraqi regime who, if they had freedom, would make different decisions. It's the leadership level at the top that has imposed this tyranny on Iraq and has brought the world to the point of the use of force. Clearly, the world would be better off without these leaders in place. This is all part of the conduct of war.